delighted to be invited to share what's a personal journey for me into this world of multidisciplinary work. I'm calling it Breaking Boundaries, and really it's about how to help science and society. Now, my roots are very, very firmly in the science camp, and this picture here, around about 1970, early 1970s, was taken shortly before I joined Unilever's Port Sunlight laboratory, and this is outside that laboratory there, what you might call a load of geeks using modern terminology, as it were. And the point is, what were we all doing there? Suddenly, these are world-class scientists, and the answer is soap. There we were, working away at soap, which actually is magic technology. I'm not going to go and tell you about how magic it is now. The fact it was soap tells you a few things about the business we were in. It is, of course, fast-moving consumer goods. It was part of Unilever's home and personal care research. First thing to remember there is, yes, it was about a multinational corporation, Unilever, and it was about fast-moving consumer goods. And then I stayed beavering away doing sort of scientist-y sort of things for quite a long time, until round about the year 2000, the company cast me into what it called a white space, a strange term which I was not terribly enthusiastic about it when I first went there. And basically the remit was to find new ways of working to help science do science better. And looking back now, I would say, how do you influence science? How do you change it? How do you get to new markets and things like this? I think there's a couple of very big challenges within this industry I was in. First of all, there's the science challenge. So we were all scientists, and the big science challenge is there are so many experiments that you can do, and there's so little time. Basically, science needs help to shape where it's going to go. And then there's also the fast-moving consumer goods challenge. That stuff's here today and gone tomorrow. Oh, in fact, it's here today and gone today. Often, when you look at the products, especially in this business of soapy things, really they just look like water, especially when you're using them. They are not terribly exciting in use, and you use them and they go down the plug hole. The other side of fast-moving consumer goods is food, and that goes down the plug hole in a different way. But the idea is exactly the same. So these are two very large challenges, and what happened was I had to make new connections and find ways of doing that, and as happens with these things, but you need to meet people, and when you start looking at new ways of doing things, actually personalities count, especially when you go across disciplines, I think, because there's no reason why you have to go across disciplines. And quite soon I started looking at design as a partner and things like this. And then I was very, very lucky to meet this man, a guy called Neil. In fact, I was told to meet him by a number of young designers I'd met. And this is Neil Smith here at Northumbria's design school at the time. And he became my design wizard. And he sort of took me into places. He showed me. The great thing I learned from Neil was that design really can reach places where you don't think it's going to reach, you know. Very exciting, very creative sort of man. And he's been my mentor and leader in this. And what we did, our answer to these challenges was that we should bring my fellow science community in and help with them help co-create what we might say visions of the future, and to tell the story of what that future might be. And that then would help them go back and see which experiments they should do and things like this. Quite often when people talk about design and art working with science, they say, oh, the scientist just needs to communicate to the outside world. And that's sort of true, but I've always felt that actually charity begins at home, and the first person that the scientist should learn to communicate with is the scientist himself, herself, the team's there. So this is our answer to do that. And why does that work? I think there are strengths on both sides of this designer-scientist partnership. When I look at designers, I think the huge thing they teach science and research science is that at the end of the day, you've got to make something, you've got to come off the fence, you've got to do something. They do have finishing power. Also, they really use the brainstorm. I mean, this is a term that's used in all walks of life, but in my experience, business and science doesn't really use it all that well. It maybe goes through the apparently the process of getting ideas down on paper and things like that, but often they're sort of scribbled on bits of paper and stuck in a drawer. But it's a very, very real tool for the designer. It's a core part of what they do and how they do it. Designers are also very good at storytelling if you give them half the chance and give them enough time to do it. And they are great project managers in the sense that people like to work with them. And I've seen this loads of times, especially with fashion designers, actually. Scientist strengths on the other side. What does the scientist really teach the designer and the artist? Well, the power of slow. The great thing about research scientists is that you never get to the end. And in fact, I often say that my favourite phrase is, well, we're nearly there, it just needs a little bit more research. But then, of course, I would say that because I've had a life in research and people have paid me to do that. Another huge strength that research science has is what I will call the power of post-rationalization. You can look at stuff and then maybe you put it into a model, you analyze it and things like this. But we are great at being able to look at things and post-rationalize how we got there. And scientists are also very good storytellers, so some things we share. But the point is that with these two things, it's sort of this tension between finishing power and the power of slow are the really important ones, I think. And the fact that designers know that they're going to get stuff done, so they're good project managers. So there's a good partnership in the making there. And my partnership now with Northumbria, where it's been sort of an 8-year collaboration, and it's been a loosely connected suite of projects. And it started with the excellent bachelor's degree course here, Design for Industry, and then in recent years it's moved on to the Multidisciplinary Design Innovation. That is rather a long line. I will call it MDI from now on. And when we started out in around about 2004, it was absolutely about pure research. There was no product, there were no brands, nothing like that at all. And I think the original brief was, has design got anything new to say about the nature and behaviour of liquids, of fluids? And let the designers run away with it and come back and scratch their heads and came back with some very interesting ideas. And one thing then sort of leads to another. But at the heart of everything I've ever been connected with at Northumbria, and I think the reason that makes Northumbria an exciting place for me and different from many other institutions that I've also worked with, is the accessibility to this wonderful brain engine, which is what student groups supply. Actually, I'm often uneasy about using the word students, apart from it's a good shorthand. In my experience, they're all really good professionals, usually young professionals, but not necessarily young either, who happen to be using live projects to learn some stuff and register for a degree at the same time. There's tremendous accessibility to this brain engine up here at Northumbria. And everything that I've done has been connected with this brain engine. And I think it's a win-win situation. For the students, it's about learning through live projects. And I believe that this gives, there's personal respect and value in this. the only reason, as far as I'm concerned, for working with people like this is that I actually want and need what they're going to offer, and so that gives this extra edge to the learning opportunities that are there. For the external partners, you get this idea of sort of what I always call it a brainstorm with attitude. You can give something completely fuzzy as a brief, and let this brain engine sort out what it might mean. And as long as you give it a little bit of time and space and you engage with it properly, they'll come back to you with all sorts of really good ideas, well presented and communicated, so you don't have to worry about it. It is the end of the brainstorm written on bits of paper and shoved in the drawer, because you get this stuff that hits you in the face. The one thing when I bring external partners to work with these brain engines is that I say we have to have commitment, and we have to help curate the data. So the students should expect from the core team, both staff at the university and the external core team, analysis. They need to make the output more than the sum of the individual parts. We have to curate, we have to analyse, and this is very important. We have to be committed to doing that, to make it a genuine two-way process where both sides win. And I always say to external people, if you're going to come and do this, you're part of this team as well. It's not about saying, oh, we'll toss it out there and it doesn't sort of matter what happens and things like that. It's about making them part of the team. And actually, external partners also have a learning process in this, and that's been very important to some people. So, I said I started, and I've been pitching this talk about the balance between design and science, but when you really get to needing information and help and things like this, you have to say, is just the designer and scientist working together, is that enough? To get real depth, to get real creativity, there's all sorts of other people that can contribute extremely well, but we need the input. And this is where you find business thinking, technology, fine art, whatever, really comes in. And this, in my view, is at the heart of the MDI proposition. And a couple of months ago, I was asked to try and crystallise what this proposition was, and this is my list really. The what of multidisciplinary masters here at Northumbria. I think it's about changing the rules for study. The way I look at it from outside is it's a bit like an MBA with attitude. So it's got it's about real stuff that people care about. So it's got a firm business edge to it, but it also uses design in particular to help drive that thinking. It brings in engineering and all sorts of things like that. It changes the rules for corporation-university partnership, which is sort of what I've been talking about a bit, and I'll go on to say a bit more about that. And it's evidence as well. The fact it's working is evidence that the rules can be changed, and it can become, this type of working can become a vehicle to spread change. Very, very important to the outsider is the fact it's single point access that goes across faculties in the universities or whatever. There's a multidisciplinary core staff team that give deep expert shaping, curation, analysis, etc. And there's the student brain engine to generate ideas, and ideas as data. I tend to think of ideas as data, very much so. But to the outside person, to the partner, it's just a single point. Absolutely wonderful. And it's flexible, fleet-footed, responsive. Because it's through live projects, there's no visible modular silo structure. If we want to go and look in more detail at design, or if we want to go and look in more detail at business or art maybe, we can use this sort of core, this this seed for change of MDI to go and talk to other people across the university or outside, when it comes to that. And underpinning this is that it's about research that generates rather than evaluates. This is a term I sort of heard Tim Brown from IDEO use a few years ago in a lecture. I think isn't he the father of the term design thinking, that sort of terminology, that designers generate ideas rather than completely evaluate them. And this is absolutely core to it. The whole of the MDI process is underpinned and led by this power of the designer to be a good project manager. This isn't at all decrying or diminishing what everyone else brings to it, but it's this way of thinking that drives the whole process, that makes it very exciting to me as a scientist. So, I talked about the fact that we've been doing fast-moving consumer goods projects and things like this, but once you get to this deeper way of thinking, creativity, it opens new doors for you. And I said it's always important to think of personalities, and this is one door that's been opened with Caroline Shepherd, who's a lawyer, a very influential lawyer here in the UK, who deals with the little things in life and getting fairness to people on the little things in life that really screw them up. Very similar in some respects. She's the law's version of fast-moving consumer goods, actually. The little things in life, it's not all about committing murders and things like that. People get absolutely annoyed when they feel that they've been unjustly given a parking ticket and things like that. And she's the woman who sort of brought these sort of small things to people. Because of this depth of new thinking here in MDI, she has become very engaged with through what we call the parking projects. I'm not going to go into detail of any projects, but her driver is that she wants to go from what she says Generation X to Generation Y, and so she really wants to use the power of new generation, media savvy, open-minded, the so-called Y generation people to help shape public policy. She thinks that public policy, there's a disconnect between citizen and state, and she thinks that there's a real role for groups like MDI in helping to change that. And we've done a number of small projects with her which start showing the way. And she's very keen to take this outside parking, in fact, and I hope we'll do that sometime. It also allows you to start looking at maybe some detailed science and technology. Now, these things are under confidentiality agreements. I'm not going to tell you anything about them, but it's sort of about what Stephen Kiffin, the dean here, says. He really wants people to be learning about the unknown and driving the unknown. And I say to him, the way that you do this is you have live projects which are about people really struggling with new science and to get the message of new science across. And a couple of friends and colleagues here now at Northumbria, Steve Singleton, just the headline title, Powered by Light, that was about one piece of technology. What can we do with it? What does the world look like when that's operating? Another one, Neil Parry, one of the world's top bioscientists, the future is bio. What can we say about that? So you can really, when you've got this depth of thinking that MDI offers, you can start getting some really crunchy projects and partners where they care about and they need the output that's coming out. So the journey so far, going back to it, it started back around about 2004, so it was absolutely research. There was nothing about products, brands, things like this. Now, after all these years, from an industrial R&D point of view, it's meeting all the needs that sort of multinationals have. It's about science, it's about disruptive technologies, it's about brands, it's about claims, and all these sort of things that a big company will need, we can touch. It's also now going into the field of social innovation through things like the parking projects. And the context for these, they become pretty large strategic context, really. As far as big companies, a good example is Unilever, who's one of the companies that we work with quite a lot, and their sustainable living plan, very, very much in the public domain, is actually their strategy for growth. And they really want help, and they very publicly want help about taking that forward. And then this sort of business that Caroline Shepherd's on about, this disconnect of citizen and state, how come we've lost it? How have we lost the idea of community and things like this? What can Generation Y, the inquisitive generation who know how to get things done, and are maybe not so don't have as many hang-ups as Generation X, what have they got to say about it? These are really pretty big contexts now. The sort of thing we do is storytelling. I love stories. In fact, after years as a research scientist, I suddenly thought what I do is I collect people's stories. So that's what I do. Stories are data. Stories are wonderful. We also do things like brand, product concepts, demonstrations, but back again, narratives and good ways of presenting them. And the outcomes, well, they're usually, back to something I said right at the start, that sort of charity begins at home with these things, that our partners often really need and value help for them to see where they're going, and for them to talk with colleagues and get their story across to the people that they need to influence to get things to happen. And this is as true for Caroline Shepherd as it is true for the big corporations like Unilever with their research scientists. Impact now is moving up, so it is about, it goes to pretty senior levels in these communities, and it is to strategy makers and drivers, and that's where we want to be. And impact, especially when you start working with multinationals, you do get global reach, which is very good. A final word, and this from our colleague Raymond Oliver, and who has a wonderful design and science and technology group at the university, which he calls PQDI, Interaction Studio Lab. He's an engineer, scientist, industrial engineer scientist like me, and he starts saying now, should it be multidisciplinary or is it non-disciplinary? And he's really encouraging his group of readers and researchers working with him to not think of themselves as having any discipline, but to be non-disciplinary. Let's just go and do stuff and do it when it needs to be done. And so I think this is definitely where MDI is going as well. So in summary, my partnership with MDI is all about influencing science, absolutely, informing new markets, influencing policymakers, especially now that we start dealing with people like Caroline Shepherd and her colleagues. Completely it's about future mapping through co-creation, getting people together, tackling difficult problems that really need everyone to work together on it and have some good new ideas. Absolutely, it's about using the power of the brain engine, this wonderful community of new professionals that are creative thinkers and open to ideas. And it's completely about unleashing the power of multidisciplinarity, or perhaps we should say non-disciplinarity. Non-disciplinary thinking, following Raymond Oliver's line. So the future, I like to use this picture. So visioning has been going on for a long time. This was 1930s Man of the 21st Century by fashion designer Gilbert Roeder. Includes a hat with a radio antenna on it so that the man could be connected with the outside world. and now of course we do this without thinking all the time. So yes, please, let's have more visioning the future, let's have more co-creation, and why not join us? So thank you very much for listening to me. This is me. If you've got any questions or would like to contact me, please don't hesitate. Thank you.